call, and again, it's been 2 weeks since I've looked at this material. I have not looked at all at this course until this morning. About 9 o'clock this morning, I got here and I pulled up my computer. I said, all right, what the heck am I going to talk about today? Right there, So, and this class is fairly easy because I'm using publisher slides, and I've taught it probably 30 times over the years, some version of C. So, but the last thing I talked about was I went through the if-then-else statements, and I went through the do-while, right? So you probably remember these slides. This is chapter 5 out of the book right here, and I'm just going to kind of slide through them real quick here. Right there, I covered the for loop and I covered the do-while loop, right? And there's two versions of that. The previous chapter, chapter 4, I covered the if statement and the if-else right there. So, where we're going to pick up here today is the switch statement right there, the multiple right there. And I mentioned that this one might be usable on your project, although it's a little late to implement your project now because you should be getting close to finishing it up. But this is an ideal right there. And that's pretty much where I'm going to kind of wrap up today right there. I may get it right there. So I'm going to just jump ahead here. So the for loop we covered, the while loop we covered, and you've got copies of these slides. You would have to use them in at least the while loop you would use in your project. The for loop I don't think you used that there. The if-else statement you would have used in the project. Right there. So, okay. As we jump through here, the do while. And then there's also the do until. Right there. Okay. Now we get into what they call the switch statement right here. And the switch statement allows us to reduce the if-else down to a single statement where we have multiple selections. Now, there's some disadvantages of it because it doesn't allow less than or greater than. It only allows basically an exact match right there, and you'll see what I mean by that there. But each action is associated with the value of an integral constant expression. In other words, it only works with integers. Now integers include characters, but it doesn't include, or chars, it doesn't include strings right there. So, that there, in gradebook, this example here uses A, B, C, D, and F as a way of looking at counters right there. We still have to use the if-else statement to look to see whether it's a grade A, B, C, or D, or F, because there we're looking for a number greater than or equal to 90, a number greater than or equal to 80, that type of logic right there. But once we have A, B, C, D, or F, that there. Now again, this would play in handy for the project where you've got a choice of 3 or 4 numbers where you can do a select case instead of if then else right there. So, right there. But again, what they've added here, again, they're doing this, and I'm sorry here, but I'm getting way off here. Yes, they're still doing this within the class that you don't have to worry about the class so much, but they've assigned 5 different integers right here, A through F, count. In other words, we're keeping track of how many A, B, C's, D's, or F's in this class right there. And we're assigning to these integers A count, B count, C count, D count right there. And we could do this within a program without the class notation right there. And all we're doing here is again, we initialize them all to 0. Again, we can initialize the count of A grades to 0, B grades to 0, right there. And how did he declared them? Why does he put that 0 there? I'm kind of confused why he's got this bracket 0 that there. You would not have that in a regular C++ or C program right there. So, because that's usually specifying right there string or string name, grade count, right there. But initialize the count of A's to 0, initialize. You normally would just say A count equals 0, B count equals 0, and you would have done that here actually, right there, if you would have put it right there. In other words, you would say unsigned int A count equals 0 to initialize it, right there. Or you could do that in your code at the beginning of your code. It doesn't matter right there. But we're setting at the, now what we're really, this is all repeat that there. I don't want, it's not part of today's lecture. I'm not going to worry about that there. This is all again repeat right there. Now this is the statement that we are going to look at right here, and it just simply loops until char end get is not equal to end of file right there. Now end of file, as I mentioned, is Control Z. So as we're entering this in, we're putting in A, B, C, D, E, or not E, but A, B, C, D, F right there. And notice that we're also handling the case here of right here of upper and lower case right there, and that's not working right now. Right there, right here, we've got upper and lower case here, upper and lower case B. So we just keep entering A, B, C, D, E, right there, F, until we get right there. And we can write this in a simple program, and I'll go through the demo for it and let you do that when I'm done here. But again, all we're going to do is that there, and we're keeping track of right there. Okay, here we go. We're keeping track of every time we enter an A or upper or lower case, we increment A count. Every time we increment a B, we increment B count. And we just keep track of that. And we keep running this until we hit Control Z. Control Z is the end of file marker right there. So we're doing this within a loop right there. And I'll write a short little program that does this whole thing here in a few minutes right there. So again, at the end, we're going to ignore the new line, we're going to ignore any tabs, we're going to ignore any spaces, and then we're just going to then break right there. Right there. And then we also have an error message, the default, right there. So let me just kind of go back to the beginning of this statement right here. Right here. This is the beginning of the statement. We have the keyword switch. Right there. Switch means that we're that there. Switch is like if, or it's like print, or right there. It's a keyword that there, and then we're specifying the variable in which we're going to switch on. So we're going to look at grade. Now, grade is a character. Now, they don't, right here, now they show it as an int, but it's actually being incremented as a character right there. So, and remember that a char, type char, is actually an integer right there. So, we can call it an int here, or we can call it a char right there. It doesn't matter which one that we call it right there. So we go through here, and while we're incrementing grades, and all we have to do is just hit the A, B, C right there, and we're doing this all the way through here, right there, and then right there, if we hit anything other than A, B, C, D, or F, we'll get an error message right here. Except for if we put in new lines, in other words, we hit the enter key, we hit the tab key, we hit the space key, that there, we're going to just simply ignore those right there. Right there. And we just keep doing that inside our loop right there. Right there. And while. Right there. And at the end, we can print those four out right there. And that's what this right does right here, right there. Again, also notice that we've got a little bit of a, that there, is that we use one C out, and then we do new lines on the end of each one of these in order to do that thing. So this is the case statement right there. It's not very difficult to use, but I'm going to try to right there, and I'm going to move this right there. And again, what we're going to be basically doing is I'm just going to kind of write this code, and I'm just going to cut and paste. I can't cut and paste because it's not in a form that I can, but I'm just going to do that there. So again, I'm going to File, New, Source File, right there, and I'm just going to do our include, and right here. Include right there, and we're going to do string right there, and we're going to also include, and I don't see it shown here. I guess I need to go back and forth right here. I don't see it shown where he's including the standard I/O. Oh, here it is. Include standard I/O and using namespace right there. So we need to include those. Include right there. And we've got here I/O stream right there. And we also need to using namespace std right there. So those are our three lines that we use right there. Make sure I've got that right. Oh, it's a semicolon. That's why he gave me a red line right there. So we've got, and okay, so that we need that at the beginning of every program, right there, essentially, right there. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead, and I'm just going to say int main right there. And I'm going to go ahead and declare my variables right there. And I'm going to say int a count equal 0 right there. Int b count equals 0. Yeah, what is going on with my fingers today? Int c count equal 0 right there. Int d count equal 0, and int f count equal 0 right there. And I'm going to close this just simply just to make sure I don't have any mistakes here. File, save as, and yeah, we'll just create a directory for it. We'll call it grades right there, and we'll call it grades.cpp right there, and let's just do a project. Let's compile it and enter, go. Oh, I guess I don't need string after all on this one. Actually, I don't need string. Let's compile that there again. And it compiles fine, so we can go ahead and start adding the rest of that there. And the rest of this is fairly straightforward right there, because as we go through it and look at the rest of this right here. Again, we're skipping. This is really the rest of it right there. We're just going to loop right here. And we're just going to put that in right here. While we need another one here. Int grade right there. Or I'm going to give it a char. Grade right there. Right there. While grade equal cn get right there, cn get not equal to EOF right there. And I'm going to put a bracket here. Now again, I'm going to compile because that doesn't look right. Yeah, that doesn't look right here, so let's look at this here and get this straightened out. While grade not equal to expected that does not look right. Grade. It looks like there's one too many of these right there. There should be two here. Okay, that compiled cleanly, so we've got that there. Now it's a case again, we can't pull that there. So now we put in our case statements right there. So we just simply start off here, and I'm just going to do a case A, case little a right there. And again, all we're going to do is we're going to say A count plus plus. Right there. And right there. And break. Right there. Now we're just going to keep repeating this for A, B, C, D. So I'm just going to cheat a little bit, and I'm just going to do a copy. Paste it and change that to a B. Change this to a B. And change this to a B. Right there. Come down here and do that there. This time we do a C. Now I do them one at a time. Some people will do them all that there just simply because I sometimes screw up when I do multiple ones right there. Now we're going to do the D. D. And D. D. And F, this is our last one. Right here, F. Now we're going to do the case, and I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint right here. And right here, and we're going to do these three here. So this is new line, tab, and right there we just list those three right there. And I'm just going to do the same thing right here. Right there. Only in this case here we replace this with the new line character. We replace this one with the tab character. Tab character. We type a new one, case. We put a space there. And we just remove this A count right there. Right there. And then we do a default. Right there. In our default, we're just going to do a cout. You've entered invalid grade right there, and we'll just put a new line in there. Right there. And that should be about right. Right there. And I'm not going to worry about the enter a new grade right there. We'll just go through right there. Actually, we probably should go ahead and put the new line in there. Inline. Inline, right there. And then we need to end our case at right there. Again, our command for ending our case. I didn't really go to cue that there. End switch, actually, our end switch, we put a brag at there, so it's already there. So now all we got to do is right there. Right there. And then we're just going to go through here and we're going to just put our print in there. And again, all we're going to do is do our cout right there. And again, we're just going to follow the format that's given in the book. Right there. And it says this set of statements that there. The number of students who received each letter grade, and then of course we would then go through and put each one of those in. Again, I'm going to copy and paste right there. So A, B, C, D right there. And so we're going to go through there. The number of students that received now that's each grade is right there, and I'm going to put that there, and then again I'm going to right here a new line A right there. And a count. Let's make sure that that's right. Yeah, a count. Right there. Right there. A count. Right there. And I'm just going to copy this one right here. Copy. And why is it not? When we copy that, how do we copy? Right there. Again, B. Control V, C, C, Control V, D, D, Control V, F, 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 and then we're going to put in our end line. That should do it. Let me make sure that looks something like what we got there. Well, he puts the end line on the next line, but that's all right. I put all that. And that should be the whole program right there, if it works up there. And the whole idea is just to show how the case statement works here. So, project, let's execute compile, and A is, oh, you know what? I think this has to be, let's see if that, A is not with it. Oh, you know what I forgot to do is I forgot the switch statement itself. Okay, switch. I forgot one line. Right there. And then I need to then put the bracket right there. I forgot a bracket here. I'm going to delete this one and put it down below, because this here, and then I need another bracket here while right there. Program. So, okay. All right. That should do it. Let's see what happens here. Oh, expected. And everywhere I've got the word case, I forgot to put the colon. As I said, I haven't looked at it for a while. And I don't remember syntax that well. I admitted that, and I forgot the little colon. Easy things to fix, but when you're in front of a class trying to look smart, it doesn't work that well, right? Yeah, actually, yesterday I was doing something. Actually expected before case. Let me make sure that I'm doing this right here. Oh, it's at the end, not at the beginning. Now I knew something didn't look right here. It needs to be here. And the problem is I cut and pasted this. If I would have done it right the first time, and people actually enjoy doing this stuff for a living, right? Knowing that you run into these silly little mistakes. And believe it or not, there's actually a reason for this syntax right there. Why do I have case there? That case should be there. Alright, let's see. Expected colon before C out. Default. Does default have a bracket? Yep, default has a colon too. Okay. We're getting closer to making it work. Yep, finally we got all the mistakes out of that there. So we've got all the mistakes out of that there. You know, actually, I wrote some code last night in one of my classes. I didn't have any trouble, but I wasn't using the switch statement right there. So execute again. All we're going to do now in this particular case, I don't have any prompt right there. I'm going to put a prompt here, right here. C out. Enter grades till done. Use ELF and done. Right there. /n. Right there. Simply because there's no run. So I'm just going to hit A, B, C, D, A, C, Control, and then Control Z, and it does not like any of those right there. All right, what is that there? Control Z right there. Switch grade A. That looks all right, but it keeps going to the default, and I got a break on everything. I do put a break here, but I shouldn't need one. Right there, I've got a break here. And if that doesn't work, there's something funky going on. Control. Let's run it once more here and see. I'm just going to hit Control Z. Yeah, see, the Control Z works perfectly fine by itself right there. That works, but if I run it again, it does not like A. Right there. And it keeps giving it's not seeing the A right there. Which is kind of interesting because grade is equal to C get right there. I'm just curious right here. You know what? To be honest with you, I think the problem is our compilers are different. Right there. I think this cget is not working right. Okay. It doesn't like cget. Yeah. Get is supposed to get a char right there. And the parentheses, the single parentheses is supposed to denote a char. And that's right. Where, this may be a case right there. Grade is equal to C get char. That there, do not equal that. That's working right. Grade is not. See how you enter. A right there. And this doesn't. Yeah, that doesn't look wrong right there. Oh, something's up. It just tells me when there's one error, but it's not telling me what the error is. That looks okay right there. Should not require a space right there. There you entered an A. That's all in a quote. That's fine. If this doesn't work, then I am going to say that I should have started figuring out what I was going to discuss. Cannot enter grades right there. Enter an invalid grade. And I'm going to put in here grade. That way I can see what's it won't let me compile it while it's still open in the window. That's why it was giving me that error. And you entered an invalid grade and it shows a funky character. So evidently it's not reading the grade properly. Right there. So if I enter if I do this grade CN right there. I'm trying a different way here. See? Yeah, it doesn't like something right there. No match for. Okay, yeah, you can't do that with char cell. All right, I'm going to give up on this one today. Ever have one of those days where I've got a dull headache coming and it's just not working right there? And I know the problem is right here in this line right there. I've narrowed it down, and this is one of these issues that this compiler is probably handling the get char function differently than Visual Studio, right there. And that's one of the issues that we've ran across that before. This may be a case right there where if I use this grade, go back to the original one, right there, because there is cget, not in the file. C and get right there, and I probably got too many parentheses here for this right here. Yeah. Get right there. Because that's the right code, but as soon as I go to execute it, it gives me that there. And the other reason I know it's not working properly is I should be getting a response as soon as I hit the letter. It shouldn't be waiting for the carriage return right there. So that tells me that there's an issue right there. And in order to make this work, we're going to have to read this in as a string and that there. Okay. With that said, I didn't get this code to work, so I don't expect you to get to work. That there. And the problem is, and this is not unusual, is this statement right here, this C in get does not operate the same as the C in get in Visual Studio. And that has been an issue with C, C++, Pascal, any computer code. When you switch compilers, the libraries are different, and some of these functions may behave differently because I am not getting something in for grade in as a character. It's not reading that character as soon as that there. Now the Control Z it reads fine, but again I'm having to hit the carriage return right there. So what's happening is what I think is happening is that it's picking up the carriage returns up there. So with that, I'm not even going to post today's lecture right there because and now I put it into a huge loop right there. So actually I'm going to go ahead and post today's lecture. I don't mind posting mistakes where things don't work right there. But again, the case statement does work. I'll come up with another example on the case statement for Friday. So we will meet Friday, and we'll finish up this with a better working example on the case statement right there. Not this one. This is supposed to be a simple one, but obviously the grade equals cn.get is not